For content information and a written version of this video, please check the description below. Before we start this entry, I just want to thank my friend Chloe for helping me with the research for this entry. Creating these entries can be time consuming, so their help is very much appreciated. I also want to wish all my queer friends a very happy Pride Month. Welcome to the third entry in my Under the Queer Umbrella blog series. In this entry, we shall be discussing asexual spectrum identities. We will explain what asexuality means and break down some identities that fall under this category, also known as Ace-Spec. I'll also mention how I fit under these categories. Disclaimer: although I've gone into this video with the best intentions to educate others and done plenty of my own research into these identities by talking to those who identify with these labels and doing online research, I do not have the majority of these identities and therefore cannot speak from personal experience. If I get any information wrong, if you're comfortable, feel free to let me know in the comments and I will amend this entry as needed. My intention is to bring awareness to these identities and to educate on the beauty of queer identities. I encourage you to do your own research alongside this blog entry and video. You can find the links to all of these identities by clicking the links in the description. What is asexuality? The asexual spectrum, or Ace-Spec, is a group of identities which are unified by those who either completely lack sexual attraction or feel as if their experience of sexual attraction can be related more to the asexual experience than the allosexual experience. There is no one way or correct way to be asexual, and the experiences of those who identify as such can differ greatly. As always, it is important to respect the terms others use even if you personally do not fully understand them. This entry will hopefully help those who are not asexual understand these terms more and possibly give those who are questioning more clarity on their own identity. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, and we will be discussing more Ace-Spec identities in the future. So if your identity doesn't show up on this list, it's not forgotten. It will likely be mentioned at another point in the future. Before we discuss some identities that fall under the Ace-Spec, let's first briefly discuss what allosexual means to help see the difference between these identities. Allosexual. Allosexual is an umbrella term created by the Ace-Spec community to refer to those who regularly experience sexual attraction to others. Allosexuality is often considered the societal norm, and this leads to the discrimination of those who do not conform to the allocentric ideals of society. The Ace community do experience oppression because of this, and this needs to be addressed. Allosexuality is not inherently bad, but it does come with a privilege that those who are allo need to accept. Ace-Spec identities. Asexual, Ace. Asexual is likely the most heard of out of all the Ace-Spec identities out there. It is of course the term the community is named after. Asexuality is an umbrella term for any identity which is not allo, but it can be used on its own or paired with other Ace identities. Asexuality refers to the way sexual attraction is experienced, not to how it is acted upon. Those who are Ace can and do have sex for the same reasons as allos. The difference comes from how sexual attraction is experienced. It is often defined as a lack of sexual attraction and can also come with a lack of libido or a lack of desire to have sex, but it's important to remember that every Ace is different and that asexuality is not the same as celibacy. Celibacy is the choice not to partake in sexual activity, whereas asexuality is not a choice, and many asexuals do partake in sexual activity. I refer to myself as asexual. As I mentioned, it's an umbrella term for all the Ace identities, and I'm still discovering how exactly I fit into the spectrum. I know I'm asexual, but the exact label that fits me is still yet to be found. I do however identify with another label that you'll find later in this entry. I also identify as sex repulsed, but I plan to talk more about that in a later entry. Ace-Flux. Ace-Flux refers to those whose sexual attraction fluctuates, but mostly remains on the asexual spectrum. Those who are Ace-Flux can feel strongly asexual one day and feel demi-grey or even allosexual on others. All those who are Ace-Flux experience being Ace-Flux differently. Some may only fluctuate between a couple of identities, and some may fluctuate between all of them. There is no right way to be Ace-Flux. Ace-Void. Those who are Ace-Void solely identify as asexual or Ace-Spec. They can have other orientations but feel either neutrally or nothing towards them. It's a newer term, but that doesn't make it any less real. New terms are found all the time. We are all learning new things about our identities, and finding new terms or creating our own terms is a great way to feel more connected towards these parts of ourselves. Graysexual, grey ace or grace. Graysexual, also spelled as Graysexual with an A, or referred to as grey asexual, refers to those who relate to asexuality but feel that parts of their experience don't fully fall under the term asexual. Like all identities, it can be used on its own or as an umbrella term that encompasses any identity that isn't purely asexual. Graysexual is part of what I like to refer to as the big three, which includes asexual, graysexual, and demisexual. These are the Ace-Spec identities which are discussed the most. It's important that we don't just give representation to the identities that are the most known, but also give representation to those which aren't as well known or are not discussed as much. Demisexual, demi. Demisexual is the third identity within the big three. It refers to those who don't experience sexual attraction until they have formed a deep emotional connection to another. The connection can be anything from platonic to romantic. This connection is different for all demisexuals. Like all identities on this list, demisexual is not a choice, and those who are demi don't choose to be sexually attracted to others until they formed a connection. Demisexuals can use the term demi by itself or pair it with asexual. All Ace-Spec identities can be paired with other identities. You can be demi and bi or demi and straight. Those who are straight and a part of the Ace-Spec especially get a lot of hate for pretending to be queer. This is not the case, and it's important that we remember to be inclusive to all queer identities, especially those who are constantly targeted by bigots. Agosexual. Agosexual describes those who have a disconnection between themselves and their subject of arousal. They may view sexual content like porn, and they may masturbate to such content, but they have little to no sexual attraction or desire to partake in sexual activity with the subjects of arousal. There is a good list of common agosexual experiences on the LGBTA wiki, which you can find by clicking the links for agosexual down below. As always, I recommend you check out the wiki for more detailed information on these identities. This is where I find the information for these entries. I can only give so much information for each identity, and the wiki allows for a more in-depth look into each one. Many identities have lists with common experiences to help you see if the term can relate to you or not, so it's highly recommended. You never know what you'll discover about yourself. Aphobisexual. Aphobisexual is another term for those who are sex repulsed can use to refer to themselves. As I mentioned, I intend to go into more depth about what sex repulsion is in a future entry, but a brief description is that it refers to those who are adverse to partaking in sexual activity themselves, but are fine with those who do partake in sexual activity that doesn't involve them. Those who are aphobisexual can seek sexual relationships, but most don't, since they are repulsed by the idea of sex in general. The following is an exclusive identity. Qposexual. This term refers to those who feel that at one point they identified as allosexual, but this was taken or cut away from them due to trauma. This identity can only be used by trauma survivors, but I wanted to include it here to show just how diverse and inclusive the Ace-Spec community is. Qposexual. Qposexual is a term that refers to those that feel no sexual attraction, but still desire / like the idea of having a sexual relationship. Those who are Qposexual are often sex favourable, but you can still be Qposexual even if you're not. There are no conditions to any label, only basic themes that others with that label may also share. I am Rosexual. Those who use this term like having sex acts performed on them, but do not enjoy performing sex acts on others. This may be because they are sex repulsed or sex neutral. It does not necessarily mean that they are dominant or submissive, it just means exactly what it says. They like sex acts performed on them, but not performing them on others. There is no such thing as a selfish identity, which is what many who don't understand this identity accuse those with this identity of being. If you don't understand an identity, you should always listen to those that use the term and have that identity. They will always know more about it than you. All we can do is support them. The only exceptions to this rule are identities created with a specific purpose to be exclusionary. I am Rosexual is not one of those identities, so make sure to send them some love. Mirrosexual. Those with this identity experience multiple Ace-Spec identities which fluctuate rapidly, often meaning they identify identify with multiple Ace-Spec identities at the same time. This can make it difficult for mirror-sexuals to understand where exactly they fit within the Ace community. Plastiosexual. Those who use this term like performing sex acts on others but do not enjoy sex acts performed on them. This may be because they are sex repulsed or sex neutral. It does not necessarily mean that they are dominant or submissive. It just means exactly what it says. They like performing sex acts on others, but they don't like them performed on them. The following is debated to be an exclusive identity. Rosexual. Those who are Rosexual have little to no sexual attraction or interest in sexual activity due to some form of emotional exhaustion. This can be for many reasons, including previous experiences with sex or something related to sex that was emotionally exhausting. There are many who believe this term should be used exclusively for those who are neurodivergent and or disabled. Regardless, this identity doesn't just fall under the Ace-Spec umbrella, but also acts as its own subcategory. As it stands at the time of writing this entry, Rosexual is not considered an exclusive identity, but to be safe, it's important that you do plenty of research into the identity beforehand, especially if you're not neurodivergent and or disabled, before using this specific term for yourself. Rosexual. This is another term I use for myself, usually paired with another identity, which I will mention in my upcoming Aerospace blog entry. Rosexual is a term that refers to those who want or enjoy the idea or experience of sexual activity but feel strongly sex repulsed after. For me, my rosexuality presents itself by entertaining the idea of having a sexual relationship with a future partner, but feeling intense guilt and strong sense of repulsion after those thoughts. Every time I think about it, I feel this way. I understand that it can be enjoyable for some, but for me, the idea that it can be enjoyable is overridden by the extreme discomfort I feel surrounding the subject. Asexual. Those who are Asexual have a sex drive, but often find themselves not attracted to others. This is not to say they can't experience sexual attraction at all. It just means if they don't feel it, that is on rare occasions, and it is very uncommon. Axiosexual. Axiosexual can be both an Ace-Spec identity and or an Allosexual identity, depending on the one who uses the term. Those who are Axiosexual do experience sexual attraction, but only in the instance that another form of attraction is present. This can be romantic, aesthetic, or even platonic attraction. I intend to explore types of attraction outside of sexual and romantic in future entries. Omniasexual. Those who are omniasexual are purely asexual and have no sexual attraction whatsoever. They also have no interest in engaging in any sexual activity or even the idea of talking about sex-related subjects. This does not mean they don't support those who do. This is their own experience, and this doesn't reflect on others. Ace-Spec. Those who are Ace-Spec usually feel no sexual attraction, but occasionally experience rare, sudden, and intense spikes of sexual attraction for a short amount of time. After learning of this label, it made me think about my own identity. I feel this label might fit me since I do have brief spikes in sexual attraction that often overwhelm me and cause me stress, not knowing how to deal with feelings that for the most part I just don't experience. I'm not sure if I will adopt this term yet, but I'm definitely considering it and looking into it more. Qposexual. Last but not least, we have Qposexual. Those who are Qposexual only feel sexual attraction to those wearing a certain colour or colours. Since clothes are not permanent, this sexual attraction can come and go quickly. They can be attracted to those wearing the colour they like, but once it's removed, they may lose that attraction. This identity is similar to Ace-Spec in that sense. This identity is not to be confused with conceptum, which is the attraction to colours in general, but of course the two can overlap. So there we go, asexual spectrum identities. As you can see, it's way more than just ace and demi. Next time we will be discussing the aromantic spectrum, better known as Aerospec. Please do your own research alongside these entries, and I hope to see you next time. If you would like to support my channel, please subscribe, like this video, and tell me what you thought of this video. Also, remember that I have a Cash App, I have a GoFundMe to help with my transition, and my clinicians are open. Look in the description and you'll find my email, and you'll be able to contact me about that. The next video will be a ranking of my last 10 classic retellings. Then next week on Tuesday, it will be Chapter 8 of Identiphobia Serving 1, and on Thursday it will be Chapter 9 of Identiphobia Serving 1. Thank you all for watching and supporting this channel. I will see you all next time. Bye.